things. Introduce yourself to the YouTube audience today, sir.
Hi, I'm Waison. I am a game designer and software engineer at Stern Pinball. I've been with the company for coming up on 9 years now. I've made various games from Tron to XMen to Avengers, Star Trek, all the way up to the current games, the last being Black Knight.
So you've worked with almost every designer that's been at Stern at that time frame, right? Almost.
Yes. I've worked with designers who and programmers who have worked with Stern, are working with Stern, and used to work with Stern. Just because I've been around the coin-op industry and the video game arcade industry in general, so I have a long history with associations with different people who have made all sorts of games throughout the years.
So on your task to do on each project, you code and you design. Do you work with the layout, the rules,
I know this game design is a very misleading title because, especially in pinball,
right?
To be more clear, I do not do mechanical layouts, but our design process isn't just mechanical.
Right.
It's also structure of the game, theme, IP, sound, storyboard,
Integration.
All integration, which also all has to be designed. So normally when you talk pinball, the game designer is the person who...
The lead.
Well, not just
is
the lead.
Vernacular.
Not necessarily the lead, because
Okay.
the lead can be anyone's, but the game designer is the person who comes up with the original concept of the physical elements of the game. But there are other designers who do the intellectual property of the game, the rules, the scoring, all that also has to be planned out in the design phase, and those people are designers as well.
And so how did so originally were you grew up as a gamer? Is that right?
I did. I don't even know where to begin. I grew up as a gamer. I started with my first system ever was an Atari 5200 in the early to mid 80s. Eventually had a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, had those. Later on, as I got older, was in college, had an N64 and a GameCube and a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 3. I used to be a pro gamer for a lot of PC games back in the 90s when pro gaming was in its infancy. It started with StarCraft and Quake 2. Was at one point the best random player in the world for StarCraft, which obviously is a point of pride for me.
Right. Because at all times there are many. At all times there are very good players, but not only that. At all times they're probably the best players ever at that time frame of any game. Like people that played StarCraft now would not be the same, and people.
I would say actually probably the competition would be tougher now because there's more people and with better resources. So internet was still in its infancy when I was in college.
So you're learning as you're playing, whereas everybody else can get tutorials and watch 5,000 hours of walkthrough.
Right. So no one taught me how to play StarCraft. I had to learn it on my own.
Right.
And there was no one with a guide on how to do this or do that. Or if there were guides, they were very, very rough. You actually, in those days, you could invent like certain strategies that no one had conceived of. There's a couple that I attribute to myself, maybe justifiably, maybe not. But when I was beta testing StarCraft, because that's how I got into StarCraft in the first place.
How did you contact them? Did you just cold call or cold email them, or?
No, since we were at college, we had a large gaming group there, and a couple of us got into the beta, so we would share the accounts. So that's how we got to play. I like to attribute building bunkers in my SCV lines to myself. And I invented the first iteration of high ground rush in maps, the large 8-player maps. I can't remember. Damn it.
I was an FPS player at that point. Basically, the 90s, I played everything from Wolfenstein to Quake 3, and then I tapped out because Doom 3 pissed me off. They just dropped the ball. I mean, I'm online.
Doom 3 was so.
I mean, I played the hell out of Quake CTF on BBSs. I mean, I really just was going on at that. But is it that? So if you play enough games and you get good at enough games and you kind of.
Well, anyone can get good at games just through practice.
Right.
But you really have to have a fundamental understanding of games.
That's
to
what
become
I'm getting at.
professional. Yes.
So if you have that,
Yes.
that's a good skill and attribute to your future jobs, right? That in a way.
It brought the passion to be able to be a successful game dev. Game development is a very demanding, stressful job. You have short time frames to work on your projects, and if you don't meet your goals, the project might be quashed, the business might be quashed. So it's a very demanding job. It's very multidisciplinary. You have to know a lot of things about it.
Tangent question.
Yes.
So how does a development company, gaming company, software company, how does someone test? How do they know and discern whether someone's going to have that dedication? I mean, is it proportionate to their nerddom? Is it proportionate to their lifestyle that gets what they do? Because, I mean, if you just play golf on your free time and you don't play arcades or video games or pinball, that doesn't cross over. Whereas if you actually play the games or care about how the games come out, you know, that's important, right? I mean...
I would say yes and no to those points. Yes, it certainly helps having a knowledge base and a certain amount of dedication to what you're doing to begin with. I've worked with a lot of people who are not gamers.
Okay.
Who treat it as a very technical job, as something they enjoy doing.
A challenge.
Right, and because it is a challenge, because there's a lot of whatever you want, math, engineering, science that goes in behind it, and it's very challenging, and people just like the challenge. Not that they don't enjoy the work they do or the end product.
What they're cultivating. Yeah.
And actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because as a gamer, sometimes we have very biased opinions about how to design and how design even works and the work that goes into it. So, you know, having people like that who are not gamers working on games gives you a very independent view of what's going on, very non-biased.
So a balanced team would be good, you know.
And it varies from project to project. Some projects benefit from the additional passion, and some projects need a someone above to step up, look and say objectively, you know, this is the direction we should take.
Did you frequent arcades in your youth, or were you a home gamer mostly? Or?
No, I'm old enough where arcades were still very prevalent in my youth. In the 80s of New York, there were many, many great arcades, great big ones. Broadway Arcade used to be my favorite when I was in high school in the early 90s. There used to have 4 giant locations in Times Square, which was really interesting because you would have these arcades, which for younger people, but Times Square back then, before they Disneyfied,
right,
was all peep shows, maybe a prostitute here and there. So not exactly the
modern era.
Yeah, the modern era of Times Square, but you know, those arcades were a big part of my youth. And then when
how so? Like, it's memorable.
No, we would actually. I would say it's a big part of my youth because we went to seek it out.
Right.
It was a location that had almost every conceivable game under the sun that was ever made to that point. Granted, there was a lot less games made to that point, but
what were some of the highlights at that point? The games you just had to put your money in.
I mean, the big game, obviously, when I was that age, was the Street Fighter sort of games, Mortal Kombat. For arcade games, for Pinball, Terminator 2. I was trying to remember, going back. Jurassic Park.
So you played pinball, like you enjoyed pinball back then, or was it kind of like you played it when people were on Street Fighter? Did you enjoy them both?
I did enjoy them both. I got more into pinball after I started college.
Right.
There was another really large, very well maintained Pinball Pete's. Pinball Pete's was my old stomping grounds when I was in college.
Was Tim Arnold still there, or was his brother running it?
I couldn't tell you who. I saw him.
Right.
I knew who he was. I never actually really talked to him for more than like a couple of minutes.
That's
total.
a lot. Well, that's appropriate.
And it's really funny because like when I first got to college there, Pinball Pete's had
At University of Michigan.
At University of Michigan,
Go
Ann
Blue.
Arbor, go blue. They had 4 or 5 locations,
right.
I believe. And as I continued to go there over the years, they consolidated down to 1 location.
That's still around, yeah.
It is absolutely still around. I haven't been there in a number of years, but I am planning on going in the near future. So, no, and Pinball Pete's, I remember when they got their first Medieval Madness. I remember when they got their first Terminator 3. I remember when they got their first South Park.
So what years did you go to college there?
96 till 99. Was off for a couple of years, and then I finished up around 2004, 2005.
And so you went to school to learn engineering or programming, or?
I went to school. I went to the engineering school. I am a computer engineer. I took programming courses. All my design courses were for video games and game design and game theory. So I was very determined to make it in this industry.
You have to be.
You have to be for the longevity of my career.
Right.
You definitely have to be, because at some point you've got to make compromises as to why you're doing it, and you really have to have the drive and the passion.
What do you mean by compromises? Like, in general?
Just in terms of lifestyle, in terms of,
because it's not 9 to 5. It's not.
Right.
There's no 410. It's not 9 to 5. It's
exactly.
There's overtime.
Right. There's overtime. Sometimes you might have normal schedules. Sometimes you'll be working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, just to get your project out. And there's a lot of people probably sitting at work right now as I'm doing this interview, trying to get the next project out.
Right. And they have all these school of video game design colleges. Like, I know that kids are passionate, but you can't just go and take a few courses and become a developer. You can't just go and, right? It's not like you can't mail in a degree and now it's
actually different now, I think, from what I've heard. There are dedicated courses to learning how to make games in general, from all aspects, from design to programming to art to sound. But when we were younger, those things did not exist. You had to figure out your own way to make it work.
It's totally DIY back then. Everything. I mean, we were building our own computers, and everybody else was like, our computers are basically at least twice to 4 times better than the Packard Bells or whatever they're really ripping people off with, and we were ordering each and every part and doing what we could to make it better. And
absolutely,
I'm not throwing the current generation in college under the bus, but like really, it's a plug and play society now, as opposed to DIY, figure out yourself on your own. But they have more. In a way, it's better for them now because they have the resources. It took a while for us to develop.
They learn from what we've discovered, and they learn from our mistakes, and now it's a little bit more streamlined. And I'm actually a little bit envious because, you talk about building computers. I've built my own computer since basically 1999. Every computer I've ever had, I've built myself, other than laptops, of course. And I take it as a point of pride. But now there's so many, like, they simplify things so much, and there's so much integration.
Oh yeah,
it's so much
it's
easier.
been
than it used
10
to
plus
be.
years. It's all on the motherboard, and then
Right.
it's been about that long that actually the components are fine.
Right. And when was the last time you had to really worry about like component integration to see if like the firmware of this thing would work with the firmware of that thing, right?
No, yeah, it's we're at the point where things are that they're as reliable as ever, as powerful as ever.
Yes.
Side note, the computers now are fast enough and robust enough to handle whatever you need to do, right? In the development process of a pinball. I mean, really, you have what you need, right? I mean, whereas in the 90s, when people were making games, there were bottlenecks to everything.
I mean, we still have bottlenecks.
Well, right.
But
not as much.
It's the bottlenecks are different.
Okay.
That's the way I would put it. It's actually incredible how much they got done with much less resources.
It's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. Granted, the games are a little bit simpler in terms of the artistry put into it on the digital side.
Right.
Like sound effects, speech, and displays.
I mean, but in Kagan Coin in Jacksonville, Florida, where I have some pinball machines and arcade games, when Adam's Family says showtime, and the lights go off on the cloud, that's a draw. I mean, that's granted. I put blue LEDs up there, and and the game's a little blinged out.
That sounds amazing.
It's my art and craft. And to anybody that doesn't know, so anybody that operates arcade and pinball machines, this is our art. This is what we do.
Absolutely.
And so instead of drawing or painting and tattooing or what a lot of people do, us putting these games out is sharing Stern's art and craftsmanship with the world. And what we do to them, any little thing we do, is our art and craft. And I'm happy. I realize, like, I don't draw, I don't paint, I'll do anything I used to do. But I realize this is my art and craft. And so your art and craft of coding, when did you start coding? Did you do that before college, or?
I took my first programming course in senior year of high school.
Okay.
Obviously, we grew up in a time where personal computers were just new. They were just starting to become a thing. I remember my grade school getting the first set of Commodore 64s ever. And we used to play like Karateka and whatever Sesame Street game they had on those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which were actually really good games. But I actually didn't get into programming until a little bit later in life when I was already a bit older. One thing that has changed since I've been a child is how knowledgeable kids today are about programming in general, how computers work, how technology works. I volunteer at a local high school district robotics team, and all the kids there are extremely knowledgeable about that. So just intuitively, it's not even like they have to take courses. They can they know how to script things, they know how to make things work on computers that I didn't learn until college.
What's funny is that people I've talked to that are 10, 20 years older than us, they were learning it on the job or in college, whereas we learned on these things as we grew up in our teens and whatever. And these kids my story is I crawled into a computer chair, then I learned how to walk. That's my story.
Okay.
And that's really every kid's story now.
It is. For me, computers were not a resource that was readily available for everyone. There are some people who are lucky enough to have access to those things at an early age. I had some access through college. Through grade school. And, I guess if you really want to get down to it, I learned how to do Turtle. So that was basic, the first iterations of basic. But yeah, my access to computers was extremely limited until I was older, until I got to high school and then college.
And so, how did you get into the video game industry after college and whatnot?
I was very persistent. I applied to every video game job, entry-level job I could find for months until someone agreed to give me a contract job. And they kind of threw me in the deep end right away. Kind of had to, was the lead programmer for that game. It was a small third-party studio. They didn't have a lot of people there, and they had this project coming in. They just needed a body to do it, and I got it done.
And what was
That was a Barbie game. I believe it
was the full title?
No, the full title is Barbie High School
something.
Mystery.
Yeah.
Barbie Diaries High School Mystery, I believe is the full title.
It's a long title.
That is a very, very long title.
It's like some King's Quest type title.
That's the way it was.
Was it Game Boy?
It was for Game Boy Advance.
Advance, okay. And so after that, how did you get to Coin Op?
I got to Coin Op. I was in Michigan, and I had applied to several jobs, and I took a contract position or a job offer in California, and that only lasted for several months. But during that time, I had declined an offer for Incredible Technologies to work with them.
And what were they known for?
They are known for Golden Tee Golf, Silver Strike Bowling, bags, lawn darts. They are one of the oldest arcade manufacturers in the U.S.
They did Time Killers too, but I won't hold that against them.
But didn't they also do Time Killer ones? What you should hold against them is they did Street Fighter 2, the movie.
Okay,
that you should hold against them.
Fortunately, I've never played that.
You are very fortunate never
It's
to
a
play
pricey board, but yeah.
They're hard to get, and I do believe they run for a decent price.
Yeah.
But imagine Street Fighter in a Mortal Kombat style.
Right. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
It's photorealistic-ish. You got Mr. Was it? What's Adam's Family? It's Tish.
Raul Julia.
Yeah. So he's in that game.
He is absolutely in that
Jesus
game. His
Christ.
likeness and his voice.
Jesus. Well, I will only remember him in Adam's Family Pinball.
That is posthumously, that is good.
So you were there working on Golden Tee?
I did 4 updates of Golden Tee from 2008 to 2012.
So at that point, it was growing in popularity.
It was
Still.
It was their 5th Golden Tee edition.
Right.
I would say it's among their most popular, if not their most popular, considering that the platform has changed very minorly over the years.
Right.
Its popularity is staggering. It's amazing how many people follow that or dedicated to it. I've met several people in their community, and their community is they're really fun. They're a really great group of people.
They're really enthusiastic. They're not really casuals. They're a little more moderate hardcore to hardcore. Like there's no real like Silver Strike's a little more casual.
It is. The Silver Strike's a little bit more casual. The Silver Strike is also a little bit
Power Putt, baby.
Power Putt. I love Power Putt.
I like Power Putt.
It's that game
so
is so
rare.
much fun.
It's hard to find. But we have one in Jacksonville.
One of my regrets is not buying a Power Putt when I had the chance.
For how much?
I don't remember.
It's cheap. Just like
it would have been discounted because I was working there. But yeah, that was a really fun game. We used to play that on break. Whenever we got the chance.
I'm glad they did it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it more than Silver Strike or Simpsons Bowling or Golden Tee or any of the trackball-ish things.
I'll tell you my favorite game out of what they've made is Capcom Bowling.
I haven't played that. I have the board. I haven't played it though.
Capcom Bowling. I believe that came out when I was in junior high.
Okay.
I think it was really early 90s.
Right.
and I want to say 91. And that game I played so much of. So my mom would like to go bowling, and she would go to different bowling alleys across New York City and into Long Island. And so I was always there sitting in the bowling alley arcade,
Right.
playing something. And Capcom Bowling was one of those games where I just remember playing it nonstop. It was so much fun.
And so you were there until. Well, how did you go from IT to Stern? How that happen?
I used to sit across from my cue. Used to sit George Gomez, who George Gomez is currently the vice president of engineering at Stern Pinball.
What did he do at IT?
He was doing cabinet designs at the time for their slot machines. So he
is the jack of all trades.
George Gomez is one of the most intelligent, talented people I have ever met.
Okay.
And he has fantastic handwriting. If you ever see him write his name out or write out anything by hand, his handwriting is pristine.
I bet it should be on his resume then, on LinkedIn.
If you ever, all you have to do is go to his show and ask him to sign something, and perfect every time. Always comes out the same. I don't know how he does it. His talent I do not have.
He's designed toys. He's designed furniture. Then he's
Video
designed
games,
cabinets,
arcades, yes.
video games.
And he's responsible for like a lot of the classic arcade games that we remember, like Spy Hunter.
The only shame is that he designed Spy Hunter, but the pinball is garbage. It deserved a better game. I'm glad they did a game, but at that point there weren't many great designers in pinball, and it's a weird era of pinball.
To be honest, I played Spy Hunter, the pinball machine, once in an obscure location.
Yeah.
And I can't really say as to whether or not it was good enough because I didn't experience it enough.
I'm just glad they did it, but yeah, it doesn't live up to the lore. Now the Tron does. Tron, one of these shows I was playing a guy at Tron Pinball who was the world champion of Tron, the arcade game. This guy runs marathons just to get strong enough to handle 30, 40 hours of Tron, and it was a good battle.
I know people who run marathons as well and have that level of dedication. I am unfortunately not one of those people.
Yeah, me neither.
My endurance runs low after many hours of playing.
So George was at IT, and then he went to Stern, and then he contacted you, or you?
He reached out to me and asked me if I wanted a job at Stern, and I said I would absolutely love a job at Stern, and I've been working for him ever since.
Did you just instantly were like yes?
Yes.
You'd wanted to work in
I knew
pinball?
George. Well, I knew George through IT. We had a good working relationship there. I find him a fascinating, intelligent person, and there was no reason not to say yes. There really wasn't. When I went to Stern, it was a unique opportunity. I like to think of myself as a very unique individual with a very unique name and a very unique job. And I think that all very meshes well with who I am.
So it matches your lifestyle
Yes.
and what you're into.
Yes.
And they appreciate you, as opposed to being fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying, you're saying before about programming jobs, or even IT in general, anything technology, you're kind of a cog in the machine filling in the blanks.
I wouldn't say that about IT. I enjoyed my time at IT quite a lot.
No, I mean, IT is the vernacular for, the industry. Sorry, IT. I'm out, technology vernacular. But I was in the IT industry, and most technology jobs in general, in companies in corporate America, the technology keeps the company running, but you're you're the tail of the comet, even though you're the one keeping the damn everything working. But you're expendable, and whereas you have a creative job, which is you got a creative job, and you're integrated into the business model. You're integrated into the product. You're integral, so to say.
And so, like I said earlier, this industry, the coin operation, arcade, pinball industry is very small. Most people know each other, and so the companies themselves are small. So it's not like a conglomerate
Right.
video game company where you hear horror stories about how they treat their workers. I don't want to give that impression.
No.
It's smaller. Even Stern, being the biggest name in pinball,
Right.
is still a small company.
So when you went in, so Stern is in a new, much larger facility.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been there yet, but I've been to the previous one where you started out. What was it like there when you started working there? Like, was it production? Was it were they at max capacity? Were they doing fine? Were they growing? You could feel it was growing.
So I was hired as one of the first new hires as pinball was starting to grow.
After the layoff, so to say. The rearranged.
After the reorganization of
Yes.
Stern, they had they were taking on new personnel as they were ramping up, and I was among the first of the new personnel that they brought on in the development team. There was only 2 programmers when I started. I was the third.
So Lonnie and
Lyman.
okay.
Steve Ritchie had just returned just a couple months before me.
Right.
So it was really when Stern was building back up the industry.
Right.
And I think that we're sitting here now at such a fantastic show. This show is growing, and it's impressive how big this show is. This is the first I've been here, but from what everyone's telling me,
Right.
this show was much, much smaller, even just a couple of years back.
Right.
And this is a testament to how well a job Stern and everyone else in the community has done to regrow, pinball, arcades, and just this geek culture that we all love so much.
What was the first game you worked on, and what was the process like?
You mean at Stern?
At Stern.
So, the first game I worked on, I guess you could say Transformers. I worked on Tron a little bit just to get a redemption system going.
Yeah.
So I worked on it, but I didn't really work on it.
Right.
That's kind of like
I've seen that once, but you had to put a hole in the game, in the cabinet.
Yeah, you had the big red
Yeah.
ticket box on the side. Yeah, I did.
Can't miss it.
Yeah, I did the first.
That was odd to me because Chuck E. Cheese spit out tickets too, and their games like Pirates of the Caribbean. So it was, I like redemption in anything because that gets kids playing.
It does.
So then you Transformers, was that?
Transformers was my first full project there.
With George Gomez.
George Gomez designed that. Lonnie Ropp did the lead programming on that. And that's really where I learned all the critical systems and critical things that go into a pinball game. Obviously, I was already familiar with pinball as a whole, but knowing it and then knowing how it works and how it's constructed are 2 very, very different things.
Right. Because your assumptions aren't the realities.
No, they're not. And to be honest, it's really hard to fathom the complexities of pinball just given how multidisciplinary it is.
And what did you learn on that first project? What did
I learn on that first project? Aside from generally how to fit a pinball machine. I actually had to learn a lot of technical terms that people take for granted, like a VUC.
Yep.
I didn't know things like a VUC was called a VUC. Obviously, I knew rams, I knew orbits.
So vertical up kick.
Vertical up kick, yeah.
It's my favorite thing when I see a pinball machine that says, "Shoot the VUK." Yeah.
I saw
People en
that.
route are not gonna. Yeah.
No, that's actually a really, really funny story because I was going through our menu. And then I looked at the code for it. I'm like, what's a VUC? I don't know what this is. I actually had to run into the next office and ask them, what is a VUC? And they all started laughing at me. I'm like, How am I supposed to know this?
Yeah. Some things. If you just play pinball, you're not gonna know these terms.
Right.
You know, I mean, you look at a manual. Okay. VUK, Super VUK. It's. And so you went. And the next project you worked on after Transformers was.
That was XMen.
Okay. And you were more involved in that project. And
I worked as a lead on XMen. That project was a bit of a passion project for me. I'm a big X-Men fan in general. I collected their comics all throughout the 90s. And I still have all those comics to this day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was during the comic book boom, so they're not worth very much other than for my own nostalgic value.
Right.
But X-Men was just a great title to work on. It almost started out as the movie.
Okay. What do you mean almost? What does that mean?
When they were first talking about X-Men license, they were talking about potentially licensing out the movie.
Okay. Right.
And
because either way, it's a license.
Right. But I convinced them that a comic book version would be so much better.
You are correct. I mean, the movie is good for what it is.
No, the movie.
But make everybody happy, or most.
Well, the movie, it was a good way to get it the broad appeal that it has now. But for us purists, as it were, the comics are where it's at.
Right. And there's no. And the art. How did you guys get Jim Lee? How did that come to be? Because I mean, usually there's like, so when you deal licenses, the licensor gives you a style guide. So
Yes.
Did they offer or did you ask?
We didn't get Jim Lee per se.
Okay.
We got the rights to use his already drawn artwork.
Right.
To be put into the game.
Good enough for me.
It was good enough for me too. I am a big fan of Jim Lee's. I actually met him on 2 occasions. The first time was in 1993 at one of the first iterations of New York Comic Con, when it was at the Pennsylvania Hotel, a ballroom much smaller than the current room we're in currently. He was the only artist there, and you had 1 ticket to get something signed by him. It was just after X-Men 1 got released.
Wow.
And that's when I got signed by him. So I have an X-Men 1 signed by Jim Lee.
Yeah, that's a big release. That was a really big release for Marvel.
That has one of my favorite cover art splashes ever.
Oh my God, yeah.
When you had all 4 of them next to each other.
Yeah, if you don't know comics, look it up. Google Images or whoever Images. Yeah, that art's that's probably many people's walls. They're like they bought 2 and just strapped on.
I have all 4 of them, but I only got 1 signed, and it was my favorite one with Professor X in the yellow hover chair.
And you met him again later.
For
the pinball iteration or around the.
It's a very brief interaction. It was just before he became vice president at DC.
Okay.
I believe. He was an artist at what's called now Wizard World Chicago,
right,
which takes place, I believe, next month. And he was sitting there, and no one was coming up to him because it was kind of, I suppose it might have been a little lull in his career, where he was transitioning off of wherever he was before starting back up at DC.
Right.
But he was sitting there, and he must have been bored because there was no one visiting him, and he was just doodling on the paper that covers his table.
Right.
So he had all these sketches out there, and they were absolutely gorgeous. And my biggest regret is I didn't go back there and
take
it after he left.
I would have done that.
I know I should have. I'm so regretful.
Leave $2 for the new one.
Well, the show was over, so they probably just threw it away.
Oh God, jeez.
Oh, I'm so that hurts my heart. I would have loved to have
That's like modern day Rembrandt.
I know.
You know.
No, his artwork he's my favorite artist, comic book artist. He is absolutely fantastic. I've liked all his work, especially with X-Men.
And it's wonderful that his art's on the pinball and arcade game. That's unheard of. And
it is. If I had my one special wish to do it all over again, I would have gotten it redone all by him, custom.
Right.
maybe I might do that for my own XMen game.
Ah. So, in the lull, did you meet him after? You said you met him 3 times or 2 times?
That 2 times, and my interaction with him was just like, oh my God, that's Jim Lee. I'm a big fan of your work. Sorry, it's one of the rare times I actually went fanboy.
Since you were hired, Stern's been hiring and filling basically all areas and positions. They've built up in coding, design, engineering. Do you believe right now Stern's pretty much fully has a full team to keep up with development cycle, like not just the design cycle of the game and the coding, but the whole cycle?
I see.
Because you're making a good amount of games per year, and you couldn't make any more. And you to me, Stern wouldn't want to make more or less. You're pretty much at a sweet spot right now, or
no,
is Stern? Really
I actually disagree with what you say. There's always room for growth.
Okay.
And we have done, over the course of years, we have shown that there is growth here.
Right.
And we're continuing to meet that growth. And right now, I believe our staff is set, but there's much like
room for growth.
There's always room for growth. So I can't honestly say if we're set forever.
Right.
We're set for right this second.
So is growth predicted for this year, like this year versus last year?
We will always predict growth because we're always trying to grow this industry.
And no matter what. I mean, I know you're not. Stern's not here to survive. You're here to grow it as big as possible.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to.
You guys, Stern wanted to go to the new factory and just, oh, okay, we're just gonna make a few more.
We want to grow the industry. We want to grow the community. We want to grow the experience in general, because part of us make up this pinball community, especially nowadays, and the show is representative of it, is that we want to share this passion that we have, and we want people to see it, and we want other people to enjoy it, and that's kind of where we are at.
And to expand it is to connect more people. Is online being developed as we speak? Is it projected, or is it actually being developed?
It was already announced last year by George. It is under development. I can't speak much more to that other than saying it's something we're working on. There's no timetable that I know of.
Right.
It'll happen when it happens, but it's something we're working towards, and hopefully it will, improve how people play pinball.
How do you believe it'll bring more to pinball? What do you, in general, not specific,
I'm such a gamer.
Right.
That stats mean everything to me.
Okay.
I want to know how many times have I won. I want a little icon with my avatar that says who I am. I want, those type of things appeal to me, and then I'm sure they appeal to a lot of other gamers out there as well. And I want a history of these are the games I played. This is how much I played.
And the current system can go online. The current system can do online connectivity, Spike 2? Or would that have to be an upgrade?
I do not have the answer to that.
Okay. I'll have to research that with George, but is it something that's been demanded from us and the players?
The community in general?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of clamor for it. Obviously, since I worked at IT, that's something that's very big for them.
Right.
Their online community is quite substantial, and it makes up a good portion of their player base. So, yeah, I think it could have a similar, if not greater, effect for pinball.
And I believe, in a nutshell, Stern they implemented the LCD at the right time. Not too early, not too late. That, I hope, is the same thing that happens with online.
I could only assume that it will be a big hit where people can track each other organically I know there's a lot of very dedicated people out there in the community who have tools and apps or books with player rankings and player information, and so hopefully this will help them out a lot.
Well, we're at 10 seconds left. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, thank you everyone for supporting the community.